There are men the town calls death itself. Declan Frost was one of them. 7 wives, 7 graves. No survivors. But when Penelope Ashford, the doctor's sharp-tongued daughter everyone dismissed as too stubborn for her own good, dragged his half-drowned body from the river, she didn't see a curse. She saw a man. And while the whole town whispered she'd be the 8th name carved in wood, Penny made a choice that would shatter everything they believed about fate, fear, and what it means to survive in a land that kills the weak and buries the foolish. If you want to see how far this story travels, drop a comment with your city and hit that like button. Now let me tell you what really happened. The river was angry that morning. Penny heard it from her father's clinic, a low roar that meant the snowmelt upstream had finally broken through. She was elbow-deep in sorting medical supplies, laudanum, carbolic acid, clean bandages that never stayed clean for long, when Mrs. Halloran burst through the door, face red and breathless. "There's a body in the water," she gasped. "Down by the bend." Penny's father didn't look up from his ledger. "Dead?" "Don't know. Didn't get close enough." "Then why are you here?" Mrs. Halloran's mouth worked soundlessly for a moment. Her eyes found Penny, and something cold passed through them. "Because it might be him." The air in the room changed. "Him," her father repeated, setting down his pen with deliberate care. Declan Frost. Penny had heard the name before. Everyone in Carter's Ridge had heard it. You couldn't live in Wyoming territory without hearing about the man who buried wives the way other men planted crops. 7 of them, if the stories held true. 7 women who'd followed him up to that isolated cabin in the mountains and never came back down alive. "If it's Frost, let the river have him," her father said flatly. But Penny was already reaching for her coat. "Penelope." She paused, one arm through the sleeve. Her father's voice carried the warning tone she'd learned to ignore around age 12. "That man is a walking graveyard. You go near him, you're asking for trouble. He might be injured. He might be cursed. There's no such thing as curses." Penny shrugged into her coat and grabbed the medical bag from the shelf. "There's infection, exposure, broken bones, and stupidity. None of those are supernatural. Your mouth is going to get you killed one day. At least I'll die having said something worth hearing." She was out the door before he could respond. The river bend was a 15-minute walk from the clinic, but Penny made it in 10. A small crowd had already gathered on the bank, mostly women, she noted, clutching shawls and whispering behind their hands. The men stood farther back, arms crossed, faces hard. She pushed through to the front. He was caught in the shallows, wedged between 2 rocks, where the current had deposited him like debris. Face down, one arm twisted at an angle that made her wince even from a distance. His coat was dark with water, his hair plastered to his skull. "Someone pull him out," Penny said. Nobody moved. She turned to face them. "He could still be alive." "Could be," someone muttered. "Could also be better off dead." "That's not our decision to make." "Ain't yours either, Miss Ashford." The speaker was Tom Bridger, the blacksmith's son. Big shoulders, small brain, and a talent for saying the cruelest thing possible at any given moment. Penny had set his broken finger last winter, and he'd complained the entire time that she was too rough, too cold, too unwomanly in her approach. She'd told him if he wanted gentle hands, he should have broken his finger in a whorehouse instead of a bar fight. "If you won't help, get out of my way," she said. "You touch him, you're cursed too. I'll take my chances." She didn't wait for permission. The riverbank was slick with mud, and she nearly lost her footing twice on the way down. But she made it to the water's edge and waded in. The cold hit her like a fist, spring runoff, ice melt, the kind of cold that turned your bones to iron and made your lungs forget how to work. Up close, he looked dead. No movement, no breath she could see. But when she pressed 2 fingers to his neck, she felt it, a pulse, faint and irregular, but there. "He's alive!" she called back to the shore. "Leave him!" someone shouted. "Help me get him out!" Let the river finish what it started. Penny's jaw clenched. She hooked her hands under his arms and pulled. He was heavy, dead weight, waterlogged coat adding pounds, and the current fought her for every inch. Her boots slipped on the rocks. Water soaked through her skirt, dragging at her legs. She pulled harder. Halfway to shore, her foot caught on something submerged and she went down. Water closed over her head, shockingly cold, and for one disorienting moment she didn't know which way was up. Then her knee hit stone, Pain flared bright and clarifying, and she shoved herself upright, gasping. The man, Frost, if that's who he was, had slipped from her grip. She lunged for him, caught his coat, pulled him back. This time she didn't try to drag him. She wedged her shoulder under his arm and half carried, half walked him toward the bank, her teeth chattering so hard she bit her tongue. When she finally hauled him onto dry ground, she collapsed beside him, breathing like she'd run a mile. The crowd had backed up. As if proximity alone might invite disaster, Penny rolled him onto his side. Water poured from his mouth, his nose. She struck his back once, hard, and he convulsed, coughing up half the river. His eyes cracked open, just a sliver, unfocused and glazed, then fell shut again. "Someone get a wagon," Penny said. No one moved. "A wagon. Now." "Take him to your clinic. You bring the curse with him," Tom said. "Whole town will suffer for it." Penny looked up at him, water streaming from her hair, mud on her face, fury bright in her chest. "The only curse in this town is cowardice. If you won't help, go home and pray your own stupidity doesn't catch up with you before mine does." It was Mr. Chen who finally stepped forward. He ran the general store, kept to himself, and had no patience for frontier superstition. "I'll bring the wagon." "Thank you." While they waited, Penny checked Frost over as best she could. His pulse was stronger now, but his breathing was shallow. The arm she'd noticed earlier wasn't broken, just badly bruised. No obvious head wound. Likely hypothermia. Possible pneumonia if they didn't get him warm fast. She pulled off her coat and draped it over him. It wouldn't do much, but it was something. Tom hadn't left. He stood at the edge of the group, arms crossed, face twisted in something between anger and fear. "You know what they say about him." "I've heard the stories." "Then you know he killed them. All 7. "I know 7 women died. I don't know how, and neither do you. Doesn't matter how. Matters that they're dead." "People die, Tom. It's what happens when you live in a place that's trying to kill you every day of the week. Winter, disease, childbirth, infected cuts, none of that needs a curse to explain it." 7 women, Tom insisted. "That's not bad luck, that's something else." Penny stood, her knees wobbling slightly. "If you're so sure he's dangerous, why are you still standing here? Afraid he'll curse you from 20 feet away?" Tom's face flushed. He opened his mouth, closed it, then turned and walked off. Most of the crowd followed. By the time Mr. Chen returned with the wagon, only a handful of people remained. They helped load Frost into the back, helped reluctantly, keeping their hands as far from him as possible, and then Penny climbed up beside Mr. Chen and they rolled toward the clinic. "You're making enemies," Mr. Chen said quietly. "I've had enemies since I was 16 and told the pastor his sermon on wifely obedience was historically inaccurate. This is different." "How?" "He's different." Mr. Chen glanced over his shoulder at the unconscious man in the wagon bed. "They're afraid of him. And now they'll be afraid of you too." Penny looked back as well. Frost's face was pale, his lips faintly blue. He looked like a man, nothing more. Rough-featured, maybe 40 years old, with scars on his knuckles and lines around his eyes that spoke of hard living. "Let them be afraid," she said. "Bag." Her father met them at the clinic door, his face set in the expression Penny had come to think of as resignation mixed with fury. "Absolutely not. He needs help. He needs a coffin. Don't bring him in here." "I already did." Penny hopped down from the wagon and moved to the back. "Mr. Chen, can you help me carry him?" "Penelope, I forbid it." She looked at her father. Really looked at him. The gray in his beard, the stoop in his shoulders, the way his hands shook slightly when he was angry. He was a good doctor, a good man, but he was also afraid, and fear made people cruel. "You taught me the Hippocratic Oath when I was 10 years old," Penny said. "Do no harm, remember?" "This isn't about the oath." "Then what is it about?" "Survival. His, yours, mine. You bring a cursed man into this clinic, no one in town will come here when they're sick. We'll lose everything. If we turn away a dying man because of superstition, we've already lost everything that matters." They stared at each other. In the wagon bed, Frost coughed, a wet, rattling sound that decided the argument. Penny and Mr. Chen carried him inside. They laid him on the examination table in the back room. Penny's father watched from the doorway, silent now, his disapproval of physical presence in the room. "I'll need hot water," Penny said. "And blankets. All of them." Mr. Chen left to fetch what she asked for. Penny started cutting away Frost's wet clothes, coat, shirt, undershirt, all of it soaked through and freezing. His skin was ice cold to the touch, his muscles rigid. She'd seen hypothermia before. Trappers caught in early snow, children who'd wandered too far from home. The body shut down to protect itself, pulling blood away from the extremities to keep the vital organs alive. If you didn't warm them carefully, the shock could kill them. She worked methodically, stripped him down, dried him off, wrapped him in every blanket she could find, built up the fire in the stove until the room was sweltering, checked his pulse every few minutes. Her father appeared with a mug of hot broth. "Get this in him if you can." It was the closest he'd come to helping, and Penny took it as a peace offering. "Thank you." He nodded, then hesitated in the doorway. "When he wakes up, if he wakes up, you ask him what happened to those women." "I will." "And if he doesn't have an answer you believe, then I'll decide what to do next." Her father left. Penny sat beside the table, watching Frost breathe. In the firelight, his face looked less harsh, younger, maybe, or just worn down by whatever weight he'd been carrying. She wondered what his voice sounded like, whether he'd thank her for pulling him from the river or curse her for it. Either way, she'd done the right thing. She was sure of that much. The hours passed slowly. She dozed in the chair, woke whenever his breathing changed, checked his temperature with the back of her hand. Sometime around midnight, his eyes opened. He stared at the ceiling for a long moment, not moving. Then his gaze shifted to her. "Where am I?" His voice was rough, barely more than a whisper. "Carter's Ridge, my father's clinic." He processed this. "You pulled me out." "Yes." "Why?" "Because you were drowning." "Should have let me." Penny leaned forward, elbows on her knees. "Why were you in the river?" "Fell." "From where?" "Bridge, horse spooked." He coughed, winced. "Went over the side." "Lucky you survived." "Unlucky." He closed his eyes again. "You don't know who I am." "Declan Frost. 7 wives, 7 graves. The whole town thinks you're cursed." His jaw tightened. "Smart town." "Superstitious town. There's a difference." "You don't believe in curses?" "I believe in patterns, and I believe people see what they want to see." She paused. "What happened to them?" "They died." "I know that part." "How?" He was silent for a long time, long enough that she thought he might not answer. Then, "First one was Emma. Fever took her 3 months after we married. Second was Mary, childbirth. Baby didn't make it either." His voice was flat, reciting facts. "Third was Caroline. Fell through ice during a hard winter. Fourth was Anne, rattlesnake bite. Fifth was Elizabeth, pneumonia. Sixth was Sarah, kicked by a horse, cracked her skull." He opened his eyes and looked at her. Seventh was Rebecca. She hung herself in the barn. Penny's chest tightened. "I'm sorry." "Don't be. Wasn't your fault." "It wasn't yours either." He laughed, a bitter, broken sound. "Tell that to Rebecca." "Did she leave a note?" "Didn't need to. I knew why." "Why?" "Because she realized she was next, and she couldn't live waiting for it." Penny studied him. The way he held himself, rigid, even wrapped in blankets. The way he wouldn't quite meet her eyes. This wasn't a man who killed his wives. This was a man drowning in guilt for something he couldn't control. "Fever, childbirth, accidents, pneumonia," she said quietly. "Those are the things that kill people out here. Every day, every winter. You didn't cause them. I didn't stop them. You couldn't have." Rebecca thought different. Rebecca was scared. Fear makes people do terrible things. He turned his head away. "You should have left me in the river." "Well, I didn't. So you're stuck here until you're well enough to leave." She stood, her back aching from the chair. "I'll check on you in the morning. Try to sleep." "Miss..." She paused at the door. "What's your name?" "Penelope Ashford. People call me Penny." "Penny." He said it like he was testing the weight of it. "You made a mistake pulling me out." "I've made plenty of mistakes. This isn't one of them." "You'll see." "Maybe, but I doubt it." She left him there and went to her own room, stripped off her damp clothes and climbed into bed. Outside, the wind picked up, rattling the shutters. She thought about 7 graves on a mountain. 7 women who'd loved a man and died for reasons that had nothing to do with love and everything to do with the brutal reality of frontier life. And she thought about the 8th woman, the one the town expected to join them. Let them expect, she thought, and fell asleep. What? Morning brought trouble. Penny woke to voices in the front room, angry voices, her father's among them. She dressed quickly and came downstairs to find half the town council standing in the clinic. Tom Bridger was there, along with Pastor Whitmore, the mayor, and Mrs. Halloran, who seemed to have appointed herself spokesperson for the concerned citizens of Carter's Ridge. He can't stay here, Mrs. Halloran was saying. It's not safe. He's recovering from hypothermia, Penny's father said, his voice tight. Moving him could kill him. Letting him live could kill all of us. Penny stepped into the room. Good morning. All eyes turned to her. Mrs. Halloran's expression hardened. Miss Ashford, perhaps you can explain what you were thinking bringing that man here. I was thinking he needed medical attention. He's cursed. He's hypothermic. There's a difference. 7 women died of entirely explainable causes, Penny interrupted. Fever, childbirth complications, accidents, none of which are supernatural. Pastor Whitmore stepped forward. He was a thin man with a thin voice and an unshakable belief in his own moral authority. The Lord works in mysterious ways, Miss Ashford. It's not for us to question his judgment. If 7 women dying is divine judgment, your Lord has a cruel sense of justice. The pastor's face flushed. That's blasphemy. That's honesty. And frankly, Pastor, I'm more concerned with keeping a man alive than worrying about offending your theology. Penelope, her father said quietly. A warning. She ignored it. Mr. Frost fell from a bridge. His horse spooked. He nearly drowned. Those are facts. Everything else is speculation and fear. Fear keeps people alive, the mayor said. He was a practical man, more concerned with keeping the peace than enforcing superstition. But even he looked uneasy. And right now, people are afraid. They're saying if Frost stays here, they won't come for treatment. Can't afford to lose the only doctor for 100 miles. Then they can treat themselves, Penny said flatly. You're not the doctor. Your father is. And I'm the one who does most of the work while he manages the books and pretends his hands don't shake when he tries to stitch a wound. Her father's face went white. She'd crossed a line and she knew it, but she was too angry to care. Mrs. Halloran seized the opening. Dr. Ashford, you need to control your daughter. My daughter, her father said slowly, is a grown woman with her own mind. I stopped controlling her around the time she learned to read. Then send Frost away. He's not well enough. Then we'll take him ourselves. You'll do no such thing. Penny moved to stand between the council and the back room. He's a patient under this roof, which means he's under my protection. You want him out, you'll have to go through me. Tom laughed. You think you can stop us? I think if you put your hands on a sick man, I'll make sure the whole territory knows Carter's Ridge drives the injured out to die because they're too cowardly to face their own fear. That's exactly what it is. Cowardice. Dressed up in talk about curses and divine will, but cowardice all the same. The room went silent. Pastor Whitmore cleared his throat. Miss Ashford, I'll pray for your soul. Pray for your own, Pastor. Mine's doing just fine. They left. Not happily, but they left. When the door closed behind them, Penny's father turned to her. You can't talk to people like that. Why not? Because we live here. We depend on them. They depend on us too, and if they're too stupid to see that, it's not my problem. It will be when they stop coming. Then we'll find new patients, or move, or I'll set up on my own. She met his eyes, but I won't turn away someone who needs help because the town's scared of shadows. Her father sighed, suddenly looking every one of his 58 years. You're so much like your mother. You say that like it's a bad thing. It got her killed. The words hit harder than she expected. Her mother had died when Penny was 12. Fever, the same thing that had taken Frost's first wife. But before that, she'd been the one who insisted on treating everyone, regardless of whether they could pay, regardless of what the town thought. She'd been stubborn, principled, and unafraid. And yes, she'd pushed herself too hard, worked through her own illness to care for others, and died for it. Mama died because she cared too much, Penny said quietly. I can think of worse ways to go. Her father shook his head and walked away. Penny went to check on Frost. Walmardraki. He was awake, sitting up slightly, his color better. When she entered, he looked at her with something like resignation. Heard voices. Town council. They wanted you gone. Smart. Cowardly. She moved to check his pulse. Stronger. Steadier. How do you feel? Like I drowned. You almost did. Should have finished the job. Stop saying that. Why? It's true. She pulled up a chair and sat, fixing him with a steady look. You want to die? Didn't say that. You keep talking like you should have. Sounds the same to me. He was quiet for a moment, then, I'm tired. Of what? Losing people. Watching them die. Knowing it'll happen again. He closed his eyes. Rebecca was the worst. She knew, kept waiting for it, and the waiting ate her alive until she couldn't take it anymore. And I couldn't stop her because how do you fight a curse? How do you convince someone they're safe when 7 women before them ended up in the ground? By proving it's not a curse, by showing them the real reasons. Already told you the reasons. Then tell the town, make them understand. They don't want to understand, they want someone to blame. Penny leaned forward, and you're giving them exactly what they want. You've accepted the story they wrote for you, the cursed man, the walking graveyard, but that's not who you are. How would you know? Because cursed men don't grieve like you do. They don't carry guilt for things they couldn't control. They don't fall off bridges because they're exhausted from running. His eyes opened. I didn't fall. Then what happened? I jumped. The air left the room. Penny sat back, the chair creaking under her. You tried to kill yourself. Tried, failed, story of my life. He laughed, but there was no humor in it. Couldn't even do that right. Why? Why do you think? I think, Penny said carefully, you've been alone too long with a story that isn't true, and I think you started to believe it. 7 graves, Penny, 7. That's not a story. No, but the curse is. You don't know that. Neither do you. You're guessing, and you've let that guess become a noose around your neck. She paused. What if you're wrong? What if I'm not? Then I'm already dead, aren't I? If you're cursed, if touching you or helping you or even sitting here talking to you dooms me, then it's done. I'm the 8th, so there's no point in you trying to protect me by pushing me away. He stared at her. You're insane. Maybe. Or maybe I'm the first person in a decade to look at you and see a man instead of a myth. And what if the myth is real? Then we'll find out together. You're serious. Completely. You don't even know me. I know you've been carrying 7 people's worth of grief, and it's killing you slower than that river ever could. I know the town's afraid of you because fear's easier than compassion. And I know if you died today, the only thing that would change is one more person would be buried on that mountain, and it wouldn't be a wife. She stood. So no, you don't get to die. Not on my watch. Frost looked at her for a long moment. Then, quietly, you're going to regret this. I've regretted plenty of things. This won't be one of them. She left him to rest and went to find her father. The next few days settled into an uneasy rhythm. Frost recovered quickly. Strong constitution, Penny noted. The kind of resilience you only got from years of hard living. By the 3rd day, he was walking around the back room. By the 5th, he was insisting he was well enough to leave. Your lungs aren't clear, Penny said, blocking the door. Clear enough. You'll be coughing blood in a week if you push too hard. Not your problem. Actually, it is. I pulled you out of the river. That makes you my responsibility. I didn't ask for that. No, but you got it anyway. He glared at her, and she glared right back. It became a game of sorts, him trying to leave, her finding reasons to keep him one more day. Medically, he probably could have gone after the first week, but Penny wasn't ready to let him disappear back into the mountains, back to that cabin, and those graves, and the slow, grinding weight of guilt. Besides, the town had made it clear they wouldn't welcome him, and Frost, for all his insistence on leaving, never quite made it to the door. They talked. Not constantly, and not about anything important at first. He told her about the mountains, the winter storms that could bury a cabin in a night. She told him about growing up in Carter's Ridge, learning medicine from her father, arguing with every authority figure who told her women weren't suited for the work. "You always this stubborn?" he asked one afternoon. "Since birth, according to my father. Must have been a difficult child." "Impossible. I asked too many questions." Like? Like why the pastor said women were made from Adam's rib if ribs don't have the anatomy to become a whole person. Like why we bled people for fevers when it just made them weaker. Like why the mayor's wife wore a new dress every Sunday when half the town couldn't afford shoes. Frost almost smiled. "Bet they loved you. They tolerated me because my father was useful and because my mother was too well liked for them to run us out." She paused. "After she died, it got harder. Why'd you stay? Where else would I go? This is home. Even when home doesn't particularly want me. Could go somewhere people wouldn't know you. Could. But then I'd be starting over, and I'm not very good at keeping my mouth shut. Figure I might as well fight the battles I know." He nodded slowly, like he understood that. "I tried starting over, 7 times. That what the marriages were? First one wasn't. Emma, I loved her, really loved her. Thought we'd have a life." His voice went distant. "Then she got sick, and I couldn't save her. Prayed, bargained, would have sold my soul if I thought it'd help. She died anyway. And the others? I kept thinking maybe it was chance. Bad luck, so I tried again. Mary seemed healthy, strong, but childbirth..." He stopped, swallowed. "They both died. Her and the baby, and I started to wonder if maybe it wasn't chance. So you tried again." 4 more times. Kept thinking maybe I could prove it wrong, maybe if I was more careful, if I watched closer, if I... He shook his head. "Doesn't matter. They all died. Different reasons, same result." "And Rebecca?" His face closed off. "Rebecca saw the graves and still said yes. I told her no, told her to leave, find someone else. She wouldn't listen." "Sounds like she loved you." "She was terrified of me. She just loved me more than she feared me. Until she didn't." He looked at Penny. "Don't make the same mistake." "I'm not making a mistake. You don't know that." "Neither do you." They fell into silence. Outside, the afternoon sun slanted through the window, dust motes drifting in the light. Somewhere in town, someone was hammering. The rhythm was steady, familiar. "What if I went with you, Penny?" Penny said suddenly. Frost's head snapped up. "What?" "To your cabin." "What if I went with you?" "Are you out of your mind?" "Probably, but think about it. If there's a curse, it'll prove itself. If there isn't, you'll see that you've been carrying guilt for something that was never your fault. And if you die, then I die. But at least we'll know." "That's insane. That's science. Form a hypothesis, test it, evaluate the results. This isn't a damn experiment, isn't it?" She leaned forward. "You've spent 10 years convinced you're poison. The only way to prove otherwise is to let someone close enough to survive it. I won't let you risk that. It's not your choice, it's mine. Penny, I'm going with you," she said firmly. "You can accept it, or you can argue about it, but either way, when you leave here, I'm coming with you." He stared at her like she'd grown a second head. "Why?" "Because you deserve to know the truth, and because I'm tired of watching people destroy themselves over stories that aren't real. And if the story is real, then at least I tried." Frost looked away, his jaw working. She could see the war in him, the part that wanted to believe her, and the part that had learned not to hope for anything. Finally, he said, "You'll regret it." "So you've said." "I mean it." "I know." "Then you're as crazy as I am." "Probably." She stood, brushing off her skirt. "We'll leave in 3 days. That'll give you time to finish healing and me time to pack." "Your father's going to lose his mind." "My father lost his mind when I was 16 and told the church women that Mary Magdalene was likely a financial supporter of Jesus' ministry, not a prostitute. He'll survive this too." She left Frost sitting there, looking like he'd been hit by a falling tree, and she went to pack. Her father found her that evening in her room, folding clothes into a canvas bag. He stood in the doorway for a long moment, just watching. Then, "You're really doing this?" "Yes. I can't stop you." "No." He came in, sat heavily on the edge of her bed. The mattress creaked under his weight. "Your mother would have done the same thing. Penny paused, a wool shirt in her hands. Would she? Without hesitation. She never could walk past someone who needed help, even when helping meant risking everything. He looked at her, and his eyes were tired. It's what I loved about her, and what killed her. She died of fever. She died because she wouldn't rest, wouldn't stop treating patients even when she was burning up, said people needed her. His voice cracked slightly. I needed her too, and so did you. Penny set the shirt down and sat beside him. I know. Do you? Because you're about to do the exact same thing. Walk into danger because you think you know better than everyone else. I don't think I know better. I just think differently. And if you're wrong, if there really is something, I don't know what to call it, something wrong with that man, then I'll deal with it. You'll be dead. Maybe. Or maybe I'll prove that 7 women died because this territory is brutal and unforgiving, not because one man carries some supernatural curse. She turned to face him. Papa, you taught me to think critically, to look for evidence, to question everything. I can't just throw that away because people are scared. Fear exists for a reason. So does courage. He sighed, rubbed his face with both hands. When he looked up, he seemed older than he had that morning. I can't lose you too. You won't. You can't promise that. No, but I can promise I'll be careful and smart, and that I won't take unnecessary risks. Going with him is an unnecessary risk. Going with him is the only way to prove the truth, and someone has to do it. Why does it have to be you? Because no one else will. They sat in silence. Outside, the evening wind picked up, rattling the window frame. Somewhere down the street, a dog barked. Normal sounds. The kind that made you forget, for a moment, that the world could be hard and strange and full of things that didn't make sense. Finally, her father stood. If you're going, take the medicine chest, the small one, and extra bandages, Papa, and the carbolic acid, and laudanum in case. He stopped, cleared his throat. Just take it. Penny stood and hugged him. He held her tightly the way he used to when she was small and afraid of thunderstorms. Come back, he whispered. I will. He left without another word. Penny finished packing, her hands steady even though her heart wasn't. She told herself this was logical, rational, a way to put superstition to rest and give Frost his life back. But part of her, the part that sounded like her mother, knew it was more than that. It was about refusing to let fear win, about standing up when everyone else sat down, about being the kind of person who walked toward trouble instead of away from it. Reckless, maybe, but also necessary. She closed the bag and set it by the door. 3 days. In 3 days, she'd know if she was right, or she'd be dead. Squawk. Word spread fast in a town the size of Carter's Ridge. By the next morning, everyone knew Penny was planning to leave with Frost. The reactions ranged from shock to outrage to a kind of grim satisfaction, as if people had been waiting for her to finally prove she was as foolish as they'd always suspected. Mrs. Halloran confronted her in the street. You're going to get yourself killed, she said, blocking Penny's path on the way to the general store. Possibly. That doesn't bother you? Everything bothers me, Mrs. Halloran. Doesn't mean I let it stop me. Your poor father, losing his wife, and now his daughter throws herself away on a man who needs help? A man who's killed 7 women. A man who watched 7 women die. There's a difference. Not to them, there isn't. Penny stepped around her. If you'll excuse me, I have supplies to buy. Mrs. Halloran followed her into the store, still talking. You think you're so smart, don't you? Smarter than the rest of us. But you're just arrogant. Arrogant and blind. Maybe, but at least I'm willing to test my assumptions. You're willing to die for them, you mean? If necessary. Mr. Chen was behind the counter, carefully not looking at them. Penny set her list down. Flour, salt, dried beef, coffee. Basics. I'll need rope too, she added. 100 feet. Rope, Mrs. Halloran said. Planning to tie yourself to him so the curse can't miss? Planning to be prepared for whatever happens. Nothing you do will prepare you for what's coming. Penny turned to face her fully. Mrs. Halloran, I appreciate your concern. Truly. But I've made my decision, and you standing here telling me I'm going to die isn't going to change it. So either say something useful or get out of my way. Mrs. Halloran's face flushed. You'll see. You'll see, and it'll be too late. She stormed out. Mr. Chen started packing the supplies, his movements efficient and quiet. After a moment, he said, People are taking bets. On what? How long you'll last. Penny's hands tightened on the counter. How long do they think? Most say 2 months, some say less. Anyone betting I'll survive? A few. He glanced up. I put money on 6 months. Despite everything, Penny almost smiled. That's generous? That's realistic. You're stubborn enough to outlast most people's expectations. He tied off the bag of flour. But Miss Ashford, Penny, be careful. Curse or no curse, that mountain's a hard place. And Frost, he's been alone a long time. That does things to a man. I know. Do you? I know enough. Mr. Chen nodded slowly, then pulled something from beneath the counter, a small pistol, the kind women sometimes carried for protection. Take this. I don't know how to shoot. Then learn, fast. He set it on the counter along with a box of ammunition. No charge. Penny looked at the gun. Small, cold, heavy with implications. She'd never held one before. Her father didn't believe in them, said they caused more problems than they solved. But her father wasn't going to the mountains. Thank you, she said quietly, and tucked it into her bag. The second day before departure, Pastor Whitmore tried one last time to save her soul. He appeared at the clinic in the afternoon, Bible in hand, wearing his most solemn expression. Penny met him at the door. I'm not interested in a sermon, Pastor. I'm not here to preach. I'm here to offer guidance. Same thing, different words. Please, just a few minutes. Against her better judgment, she let him in. They sat in the front room, the Bible heavy on his lap like a shield. I've known you since you were a child, he began. Watched you grow into a strong, intelligent woman. But strength without wisdom is dangerous. And wisdom is whatever you say it is? Wisdom is recognizing when you're walking into harm's way. I recognize it just fine. I'm choosing to walk anyway. Pastor Whitmore leaned forward. That man carries death with him. 7 women, Penny. 7 souls who trusted him and paid the price. 7 people who died of natural causes. Natural. He said the word like it tasted bad. Is it natural for one man to lose 7 wives? For every woman he touches to end up in the ground? In this territory? Yes, women die here all the time. Childbirth, disease, accidents, none of it's rare. But all of it happening to one man means he's either cursed or unlucky, and I don't believe in curses. What do you believe in? Penny met his eyes. I believe in evidence, in cause and effect, in the fact that people die because life is hard, not because some invisible force decided they deserved it. And what about faith? What about it? Faith is trusting in things unseen. Faith, Penny said carefully, is also how people justify cruelty, how they turn their backs on suffering because they've decided it's someone else's punishment, how they let fear rule them instead of compassion. The pastor's jaw tightened. You think I'm afraid? I think everyone's afraid, but most people admit it. You dress it up in scripture and call it righteousness. I'm trying to save your life. You're trying to save your conscience so that when I die, you can say you tried to stop me. He stood abruptly, the Bible clutched to his chest. You're making a terrible mistake. Then it's mine to make. And when you're dead? What then? Then you can say you were right. Put it on my headstone if it makes you feel better. Pastor Whitmore stared at her, his face a mix of anger and something that might have been genuine concern. Then he turned and walked out without another word. Penny sat in the empty room, her heart pounding harder than she wanted to admit. Part of her, the small, scared part she tried to ignore, wondered if he was right, if she was being reckless instead of brave, if faith in logic was still just faith and just as blind. But she'd come too far to turn back now. On the 3rd morning, Penny woke before dawn. She dressed in practical clothes, wool trousers she'd sewn herself, boots that could handle rough terrain, a coat thick enough for the mountain cold. She braided her hair tight and checked her bag one last time. Medicine chest, bandages, food, rope, the pistol, small and heavy at the bottom. Everything she needed, or at least everything she could think of. Her father was already awake, sitting at the kitchen table with coffee he hadn't touched. He looked up when she came down. Ready? As I'll ever be. He stood, crossed to her, and pressed something into her hand. A small compass, brass and worn smooth. Your mother's. She always said it kept her from getting lost. Penny's throat tightened. Papa? Just take it. She did, closing her fingers around the metal. It was warm from his hand. Thank you. Write to me, if you can. I will. And Penny... He stopped, swallowed hard. If it gets bad, if something happens, you come home. You don't stay out of pride or stubbornness. You come home. I will. Promise me. I promise. He pulled her into a hug, fierce and brief, then let her go before either of them could say anything else. Frost was waiting outside with 2 horses, his and one he'd borrowed from someone, though Penny couldn't imagine who in town would have lent him anything. They were both sturdy mountain breeds, shaggy and patient. You know how to ride? Frost asked. Well enough. We've got a full day's travel ahead, maybe more if the trail's bad. I can handle it. He studied her for a moment, like he was still trying to figure out if she was serious. Then he nodded and helped her load her bag onto the second horse. A small crowd had gathered to watch them leave. Not to say goodbye, just to witness. To see if Penny Ashford was really foolish enough to go through with it. She swung into the saddle, settled her weight, and looked back at her father one last time. He raised a hand. She did the same. Then she turned the horse toward the mountains and rode out of Carter's Ridge beside a man the whole town believed was death itself. The first hour passed in silence. The trail climbed steadily, leaving the grasslands behind for pine forests that smelled of sap and earth. The horses moved with the easy rhythm of animals used to rough ground, and Penny focused on staying balanced, on not thinking too hard about what she'd just done. Around mid-morning, Frost finally spoke. You can still turn back. No, I can't. I'll take you back. No one has to know you changed your mind. I didn't change my mind. You should. Penny guided her horse around a fallen log. We've been over this. Not properly. He pulled his horse to a stop, forcing her to do the same. Listen to me. That cabin, it's isolated, no neighbors for miles. If something happens, there's no one to help. I know. And winter's coming. Once the snow starts, we'll be trapped until spring. I know that too. Then you know this is insane. Yes. He stared at her. And you're still going. Yes. Why? I told you. To prove... Not that. The real reason. Penny hesitated. She could give him the logical answer, the one about science and evidence. But sitting here on horseback with the forest pressing in and the mountains rising ahead, logic felt thin. I don't know, she admitted finally. Maybe because I'm tired of watching people destroy themselves over stories. Maybe because you deserve better than what you've gotten. Or maybe I'm just as cursed as you are, and I don't know it yet. That's not funny. Wasn't trying to be. They rode on. The trail grew steeper. The air thinned, carrying the bite of altitude and coming winter. By afternoon, Penny's legs ached from gripping the saddle, and her hands were stiff from holding the reins. But she didn't complain. Frost had offered her an out, and she'd refused it. Complaining now would only prove she couldn't handle what she'd signed up for. They stopped once to water the horses at a narrow creek. Frost dismounted easily, his movements practiced. Penny climbed down more carefully, her knees wobbling when her feet hit the ground. You all right? Frost asked. Fine. You look pale. I'm always pale. It's my natural state. He almost smiled at that. You need to rest? No. We should keep moving. They did, but Frost watched her more carefully after that. She could feel his eyes on her every time the trail got rough. Every time her horse stumbled. It was irritating and oddly comforting at the same time. By the time the sun started to sink, they'd climbed high enough that the trees thinned out, giving way to rocky slopes dotted with scrub. The wind picked up, cold and sharp, and Penny pulled her coat tighter. There's a clearing ahead, Frost said. We'll camp there. How much farther to the cabin? 4, maybe 5 hours. But we can't make it before dark, and the trail's too dangerous in the dark. Penny nodded, too tired to argue. The clearing was small, sheltered by a rock outcropping that blocked the worst of the wind. Frost set up camp with the efficiency of someone who'd done it 1,000 times, hobbled the horses, gathered firewood, built a fire ring from stones. Penny tried to help, but he waved her off. "You're exhausted. Sit." "I can help. You can rest." That's helping. She sat, her back against the outcropping, and watched him work. The fire caught quickly, flames bright against the gathering dark. Frost set a pot of water to boil and pulled out hardtack and dried meat. "Not much," he said, handing her a portion, "but it'll keep you going." Penny bit into the hardtack. It was like chewing leather. "How long have you been living up here?" "Since Rebecca died. 3 years, give or take." "Alone the whole time?" "Mostly. Sometimes trappers come through. Once a prospector tried to set up camp near the cabin. I ran him off." "Why?" "Didn't want company." "And now you've got me." He looked at her across the fire. "Yeah, now I've got you." The way he said it, resigned, almost sad, made Penny's chest tighten. "You really think I'm going to die, don't you?" "I think it's likely." "Based on what? A pattern that could be coincidence?" "Seven's a lot of coincidences. Seven's a lot of tragedies, but correlation isn't causation." "You talk like a school teacher." "I read like one. My father's library is the only thing that kept me sane growing up." "What'd you read?" "Everything. Medical texts, philosophy, badly translated novels from Europe. Anything I could get my hands on." Frost poked at the fire with a stick. "Rebecca used to read. Poetry, mostly. She'd recite it while she cooked or when we were working in the garden. Drove me crazy at first, all that flowery language, but I got used to it." He paused. "After she died, the silence was worse." Penny didn't know what to say to that, so she just listened. "I tried to stop her," Frost continued. "Told her about the others, showed her the graves. She said she didn't care. Said love was worth the risk." His voice went flat. Turned out it wasn't. She chose to stay. That was her decision. And look where it got her. It got her a life with someone she loved. However short it was hers. It got her a rope around her neck. The bluntness of it hit hard. Penny looked away, into the fire. "I'm sorry." "Don't be. Just don't make the same mistake." "I'm not making a mistake." "You keep saying that." "Because it's true." "We'll see." They ate in silence after that. When the food was gone, Frost spread out bedrolls on opposite sides of the fire. Penny lay down, every muscle in her body screaming, and stared up at the stars. They were impossibly bright this high up, scattered across the sky like someone had spilled salt. "Frost?" "Yeah?" "What was Emma like, your first wife?" A long pause. Then, "Smart, stubborn, laughed louder than anyone I ever met." His voice softened. "She wanted kids. A whole house full. We used to talk about names, argue about whether we'd raise them strict or let them run wild." Another pause. "She got sick 2 months after we married. Fever came on fast. I tried everything. Cold compresses, willow bark tea, even rode to town for a doctor. Nothing worked. She died in 3 days." That must have been awful. It was. But it was also just life. People got sick and died. I grieved and I moved on. Didn't think about curses or fate. Just thought I'd been unlucky. "What changed?" "Mary. When she died in childbirth, people started talking. Said it was strange, 2 wives dead so young. Then Caroline fell through the ice and the talk got louder. By the time Anne died from the snakebite, half the county believed I was cursed. And by the time Rebecca..." He stopped. "By then, I believed it too." Penny rolled onto her side to look at him across the fire. "You're not cursed. You don't know that. I know you, or I'm starting to. And cursed men don't talk about their dead wives like they were real people. They don't carry guilt for things they couldn't control. They don't warn people away. Maybe I'm just a different kind of cursed. Or maybe you're just a man who's had terrible luck and no one to tell him it wasn't his fault." Frost was quiet for so long she thought he'd fallen asleep. Then, "Why are you really here, Penny?" "I told you." "Not the logical reason, the real one." She thought about that. About her mother, who died trying to save everyone. About the town that had never quite accepted her. about the need to prove something to herself, to Frost, to the world, that she mattered. Because someone had to, she said finally, and because I couldn't stand watching you disappear into those mountains believing a lie. That's a stupid reason to risk your life. Probably, but it's mine. He huffed, something between a laugh and a sigh. You're as crazy as I thought. Good, then we're evenly matched. The fire crackled. Wind moved through the trees, a low whisper that sounded almost like voices. Penny closed her eyes and let exhaustion pull her under. She dreamed of 7 graves on a mountain, all empty. Morning came cold and gray. Penny woke stiff and sore, her breath fogging in the air. Frost was already up, packing the camp with quick, practiced movements. We need to move, he said. Weather's turning. Penny looked up. The sky was heavy with clouds, the kind that promised snow. How far? 3 hours if we push, 4 if we don't. Then let's push. They rode hard, the horses breathing steam, the trail narrowing to barely more than a path. The trees closed in, dark and silent, and Penny had the unsettling feeling of being watched. But every time she looked, there was nothing, just shadows and branches and the occasional bird. The temperature dropped as they climbed. By the time the cabin came into view, Penny's fingers were numb, and the first flakes of snow were starting to fall. The cabin sat in a small clearing backed up against a rock face. It was rough-built, sturdy, with a stone chimney and shuttered windows. And behind it, just visible through the trees, were the graves. 7 wooden markers, simple and weathered. Penny's stomach twisted. Frost dismounted and stood there, staring at them. His face was unreadable. You all right? Penny asked. No. He turned away. But I will be. Come on. Let's get inside before the storm hits. The cabin was cold and dusty, but solid. One room with a fireplace, a rough table, a bed frame with a thin mattress. Shelves lined one wall, mostly empty. The floor was packed dirt, swept clean but worn. Frost moved through it like a ghost, lighting the fire, opening the shutters to air out the space. Penny stood by the door, suddenly uncertain. This was where 7 women had lived, and died. You can take the bed, Frost said. I'll sleep by the fire. We can share. No. The flatness in his voice made it clear the subject wasn't up for debate. Penny set her bag down and started unpacking. Medicine chest on the shelf, food supplies in the corner, the pistol, still wrapped in cloth, hidden at the bottom of her bag. Outside, the snow started coming down harder. Looks like we're stuck for a while, Frost said, watching through the window. How long? Could be a day, could be a week. Hard to say. Penny nodded, trying not to think about being trapped here with a man she barely knew, in a cabin where 7 women had died. I'm going to check the graves, she said suddenly. Frost turned. Why? Because I need to see them. It's snowing. I'll be quick. Before he could argue, she went outside. The graves were simple, wooden markers with names carved into them, some barely legible after years of weather. Penny walked down the line, reading each one. Emma, Mary, Caroline, Anne, Elizabeth, Sarah, Rebecca. 7 lives. 7 stories she'd never know. She stood there in the falling snow, feeling the weight of it. Not a curse, just loss, piled on loss until it became unbearable. They deserved better, she said quietly. Behind her, Frost's voice. Yeah, they did. She turned. He stood at the edge of the clearing, hands shoved in his pockets, snow gathering on his shoulders. I'm not afraid of you, Penny said. You should be. Maybe, but I'm not. She walked back toward him. And I'm not going to end up here. Not like this. You can't know that. Neither can you. They stood facing each other, the snow falling between them, and Penny saw something shift in his eyes. Not hope, not quite, but maybe the faintest crack in the wall he'd built around himself. Come inside, he said finally. You're freezing. They went back to the cabin together, and Frost closed the door against the storm. Inside, the fire crackled. The wind howled. And Penny sat at the rough table, warming her hands, thinking about 7 graves and the man who'd spent 3 years convinced he belonged in one too. She wasn't going to let that happen. Whatever it took, she'd prove the curse was a lie. And maybe, in the process, she'd save them both. The storm lasted 4 days. 4 days of wind that rattled the shutters and snow that piled waist-high against the cabin walls. 4 days of being trapped inside with a man who barely spoke and moved through the space like he was trying not to disturb ghosts. Penny spent the first day organizing. She cleaned the shelves, swept the floor, sorted through Frost's meager supplies, and made a mental inventory of what they had and what they'd need come deeper winter. Frost watched her work with a mixture of confusion and something that might have been amusement. "You don't have to do that," he said on the second morning when she started scrubbing the table with lye soap she'd found in the back of a cupboard. "I know." "Then why are you?" "Because I need something to do, and this table's filthy." "It's been filthy for 3 years." "Well, now it won't be." He shook his head but didn't argue. By afternoon, the table was clean enough to eat off, and Penny had moved on to mending a torn curtain that hung crooked over the window. "You know how to sew?" Frost asked, feeding wood into the fire. "My mother taught me. Said every woman should know how to mend things, even if she never planned to be domestic." "Was she? Domestic?" "Not even slightly. She could barely cook. My father used to joke that she married him for his ability to make decent stew." Penny threaded the needle, squinting in the dim light. "But she could stitch a wound faster than anyone I've ever seen. Her hands never shook." "Yours don't either." Penny glanced up. Frost was watching her, his expression thoughtful. "I get it from her, I guess." "You miss her." It wasn't a question. Penny tied off the thread and bit it clean. "Every day, but especially when I'm doing something stupid and she's not around to tell me I told you so." "She would have told you not to come here." "Probably. Then she would have come with me anyway." Frost huffed, almost a laugh. "You two sound like trouble." "We were. My father never stood a chance." The cabin settled into a rhythm after that. Frost chopped wood, checked the horses in the lean-to he'd built against the side of the cabin, kept the fire going. Penny cooked what little they had: hardtack softened in broth, dried venison stewed with wild onions Frost had stored, bitter coffee that tasted like mud but kept them warm. They didn't talk much, but the silence wasn't uncomfortable. It was the kind of quiet that came from two people learning to exist in the same space without stepping on each other. On the third night, Frost pulled out a worn deck of cards. "You play?" Penny looked up from the medical text she'd been reading by firelight. "Depends on the game." "Poker." "I know the rules. Never played for money." "We'll play for chores. Winner gets out of cooking tomorrow." "You're on." They played 3 hands. Penny won 2 of them, and Frost accused her of cheating. "I'm not cheating. You're just bad at bluffing." "I'm excellent at bluffing. You touch your jaw every time you've got a weak hand. It's obvious." Frost's hand went to his jaw, then dropped. "I do not." "You just did it again." He glared at her, but there was no heat in it. "Fine. You win. I'll cook tomorrow." "Good, because I'm terrible at it anyway." "That stew you made last night wasn't terrible." "That stew was 90% water and 10% hope." Frost actually smiled at that. A real smile, brief but genuine. It changed his whole face, made him look younger, less haunted. Penny filed the expression away, something to remember later. By the 4th day, the storm broke. Penny woke to silence. No wind, no snow battering the roof, just the crackle of the fire and Frost moving quietly near the door. "It's over," he said when he saw her awake. Penny sat up, pulling the blanket around her shoulders. "The storm?" "Yeah, we can check the damage, see what needs fixing." They dressed and went outside. The world had transformed overnight. Everything was white, clean, blindingly bright, under a sky so blue it hurt to look at. The horses were fine, huddled together for warmth. The graves were buried under snow, the markers barely visible. Frost stood looking at them for a long moment. "You all right?" Penny asked. "Yeah, just forgot what it looked like, all that white." "We can clear them off, if you want." "No, let them rest." They spent the morning digging paths to the lean-to, to the woodpile, to the small root cellar built into the hillside. It was hard work, and Penny's shoulders burned, but it felt good, purposeful. When they finally stopped for lunch, she was sweating despite the cold. "You're stronger than you look," Frost said, handing her a cup of water. "I grew up carrying medical bags and helping move patients. Builds muscle. Still, most women from town wouldn't last a day up here." Most women from town weren't raised by a man who thought his daughter should know how to set a broken bone and argue philosophy in the same afternoon. Frost sat beside her on the cabin steps. Your father sounds like a difficult man. He is, but he's also the best man I know. Penny drank, then wiped her mouth. He didn't want me to come here. Can't blame him. He thinks I'm going to end up like my mother, dead because I cared too much about the wrong things. And what do you think? I think caring about things is the only reason to be alive, even if it gets you killed. Frost was quiet. Then, that's what Rebecca said, right before... He stopped. Before she died. Yeah. Penny set the cup down. Tell me about her. Really tell me. Why? Because you've been carrying her around like a weight, and maybe talking about her will make it lighter. He looked away, jaw tight. For a moment she thought he wouldn't answer. Then, she was a widow when I met her. Her husband died in a mining accident down in Colorado. She came to Wyoming looking for work. Ended up at a ranch about 20 miles from here. He picked at a splinter on the step. I was buying supplies in town when we met. She was arguing with the shopkeeper about the price of flour, and she was winning. I liked that about her. Sounds like my kind of woman. She was sharp. Funny. Didn't take anyone's nonsense. His voice dropped. I told her about the others right away. Showed her the graves. She said she didn't care. Said she'd rather have a year with me than a lifetime of being alone. And how long did she have? 8 months. The number hung in the air. The first few months were good, Frost continued. Better than good. She fixed up the cabin, planted a garden, talked about getting chickens. She sang while she worked. Badly, but it didn't matter. He swallowed hard. Then winter came, and she got quiet. Started staring at the graves for hours, stopped sleeping. I'd wake up and find her standing outside in the snow, just staring. She was afraid, terrified, and I couldn't fix it. Couldn't convince her she was safe. Every cough, every headache, she thought it was the beginning, that she was next. What happened the night she died? Frost's hands clenched. I woke up and she was gone. Found her in the barn. He stopped, breathed. She'd hung herself from a rafter, left a note that said she was sorry, but she couldn't wait for it anymore. That dying on her own terms was better than letting the curse take her. Penny's chest ached. That wasn't your fault, wasn't it? I brought her here. I let her marry me, knowing what happened to the others. I watched her fall apart and did nothing. What could you have done? Sent her away, made her leave before it got that bad. Would she have gone? No. Then you didn't fail her. She made a choice. A terrible, heartbreaking choice. But hers. Frost looked at her finally, his eyes red-rimmed. You really believe that? Yes. Then you're a better person than me. I'm not better. I'm just... Penny searched for the word. I'm just not ready to accept that love is supposed to destroy people. Sometimes it does. And sometimes it saves them. They sat in silence, the sun bright on the snow, the air so cold it burned. Somewhere in the distance a bird called, sharp and clear. I'm glad you're here, Frost said quietly. Penny looked at him. Yeah? Yeah, even if it's a mistake, even if you end up... He couldn't finish. I won't. You keep saying that. Because it's true. He shook his head but didn't argue, and Penny thought maybe, just maybe, he was starting to believe her. The days after the storm fell into a new pattern. Frost showed Penny how to set snares for rabbits, how to read animal tracks in the snow, how to tell good wood from bad for burning. She taught him to play chess using pieces carved from scrap wood, and he was terrible at it but kept trying anyway. They worked side by side, clearing trails, reinforcing the cabin against the next storm, hauling water from the creek before it froze solid. The work was hard, relentless, but there was something satisfying about it, something real. At night, they sat by the fire and talked. About everything and nothing. Frost told her about his childhood in Missouri, about learning to trap and hunt from his father, about coming west when he was barely 20 and never looking back. Penny told him about growing up in a town that didn't know what to do with a girl who asked too many questions, about the books that saved her, about the patients she'd lost and the ones she'd saved. You ever think about leaving? Frost asked one night. Just walking away from Carter's Ridge and starting over somewhere new? All the time, But then I think, where would I go? What would I do? At least in Carter's Ridge, people know me. Even if they don't like me, they know me. That's not the same as being accepted. No, but it's something. You deserve better than something. The way he said it, firm, certain, made her chest tighten. So do you. He looked at her across the fire, and something passed between them. Not quite understanding, not yet, but the beginning of it. 2 weeks into their time at the cabin, Penny woke to find Frost already up, standing by the window with his rifle in hand. "What's wrong?" she asked, sitting up fast. "Tracks, outside. Fresh." "Animal?" "No. Human." Penny's stomach dropped. She crossed to the window and looked out. Sure enough, there in the snow, boot prints leading from the tree line to the cabin and back again. "Someone was watching us," Frost said, his voice tight. "Who?" "Don't know, but whoever it was, they got close, real close." Penny thought of the pistol hidden in her bag. "What do we do?" "We stay alert, keep the rifle loaded, and if they come back—" He looked at her. "You stay inside, no matter what." "Frost, ich shall sit." "I mean it, Penny. You stay inside." She wanted to argue, but the look on his face stopped her. This wasn't about protecting her from some mythical curse. This was about something real, something dangerous. "All right," she said, "but if something happens, I'm not just going to hide." "Fair enough." They kept watch that day, taking turns at the window. The tracks didn't reappear, but the sense of being watched lingered. Frost barely spoke, his jaw set, his hand never far from the rifle. That night, Penny couldn't sleep. She lay in the dark, listening to every sound, the wind, the fire, Frost's breathing. And underneath it all, the creeping certainty that something was coming. She thought about the town, about the people who believed Frost was cursed, about what they might do if they thought she was in danger, or worse, if they thought she was proof the curse was real. Around midnight, she heard it. A sound outside, quiet, deliberate. Footsteps. Frost was on his feet before she could move, rifle in hand. "Stay here." Like hell. She grabbed the pistol from her bag and followed him to the door. He shot her a look but didn't argue. They stepped outside together. The moon was bright, casting long shadows across the snow. And there, at the edge of the clearing, were 3 men. Penny recognized one of them immediately, Tom Bridger. "Well," Tom said, his voice carrying across the distance. "Look at that. She's still alive." Frost raised the rifle. "Get off my land." "Your land? This is wilderness. Nobody owns it." "I do, and I'm telling you to leave." Tom took a step forward. The other 2 men flanked him, strangers to Penny, rough-looking and hard-eyed. "We came to check on Miss Ashford," Tom said. "Make sure she's all right." "I'm fine," Penny called back. "Now leave." "Can't do that. Town sent us to bring you home before it's too late." "I'm not going anywhere." "You don't have a choice." Frost cocked the rifle. The sound was loud in the cold air. "She just told you her choice. Now turn around and go back to wherever you came from." Tom's face hardened. "You threatening us, Frost?" "Stating a fact. You're trespassing. I'm within my rights to defend my property." "Your property?" Tom laughed, bitter and mean. "You mean your graveyard? How many women you planning to bury before someone stops you?" "I haven't killed anyone." 7 wives say different. 7 wives died of natural causes." "Natural," Tom spat in the snow. "Ain't nothing natural about you." One of the other men spoke up. "We're not leaving without her." Penny stepped forward, ignoring Frost's hissed warning. "Then you're not leaving, because I'm staying. Miss Ashford T. My name is Penny, and I'm not some helpless woman who needs rescuing. I came here of my own free will, and I'm staying of my own free will. What happens to me is my business, not yours, not the town's. Mine." "You're making a mistake." "It's mine to make." Tom's jaw worked. Then he pulled something from his coat. A piece of paper, folded and worn. "Your father sent this. Said to give it to you if we found you alive." He tossed it into the snow between them. Penny wanted to read it, but she didn't move. Didn't take her eyes off the 3 men. "Tell my father I'm fine, and tell the town to mind their own business." "Can't do that." "Then we've got a problem." Tom looked at Frost, then at Penny, then back at Frost. You're both insane. Probably, Penny said. But we're insane together. Now get out. For a long moment, nobody moved. The air was tight, dangerous. Penny's hand ached from gripping the pistol. Then Tom turned. Come on, let's go. We're just leaving her? One of the men protested. She made her choice. Let her live with it. Tom started walking back toward the trees. Or die with it. The other two followed, casting dark looks over their shoulders. Penny and Frost stood there until the men disappeared into the forest, until the sound of their footsteps faded, until there was nothing but silence and snow. Then Frost lowered the rifle. His hands were shaking. You all right? Penny asked. No? You? No. They went back inside. Frost barred the door, checked the shutters, then sat heavily at the table. Penny retrieved the letter from the snow and unfolded it by the fire. Her father's handwriting, rushed and tight. Penny, if you're reading this, you're still alive. Thank whatever forces govern this world for that mercy. The town is in an uproar. Half think you're already dead. The other half think you will be soon. I don't know what to think anymore. I'm sending Tom and 2 men to check on you. If you want to come home, they'll bring you. If you don't, if you're determined to see this through, then at least write to me. Let me know you're safe. Your mother would never forgive me if I let you vanish into those mountains without a fight. Neither would I. Please, Penny, just write. Papa. Penny folded the letter and tucked it into her pocket. Her eyes burned, but she didn't cry. What'd it say? Frost asked. That he's worried, that I should write. Will you? Eventually, when I have something worth saying. Frost nodded. Then, thank you. For what? For standing with me out there. You didn't have to. Yes, I did. They came for both of us. They came for you, to save you from me. Well, I don't need saving, not from you. Frost looked at her, something raw in his expression. You're the first person in 10 years to say that and mean it. Then the last 10 years have been full of cowards. He almost smiled. Or realists. Same thing, most of the time. They sat together as the fire burned low. Outside, the wind picked up again. And somewhere in the darkness, 3 men rode back toward Carter's Ridge with news that would spread like wildfire. Penny Ashford was still alive, and she wasn't coming home. The confrontation changed things, made them both more cautious, more aware that the cabin wasn't as isolated as it seemed. Frost took to doing perimeter checks every morning, looking for tracks, signs of visitors. Penny kept the pistol close, practiced loading and unloading it until her hands knew the movements without thinking. But it also brought them closer, forced them to rely on each other in ways they hadn't before. One afternoon, while Frost was checking the snares, Penny explored the cabin more thoroughly. She found things tucked away in corners, small things, personal things. A wooden comb with a few strands of dark hair still caught in the teeth. A sewing kit with thread and colors Frost would never use. A child's shoe, tiny and worn, tucked behind a loose board. She held the shoe in her hand, feeling the weight of it. Mary's baby, the one who'd died with her. When Frost returned, she was still sitting there, the shoe in her lap. He froze in the doorway. Where'd you find that? Behind the board by the bed. He crossed the room and took it from her, his hands gentle. I forgot this was here. Mary's baby? Yeah, a boy. He lived 2 hours. Frost turned the shoe over, his thumb tracing the worn leather. I made these for him before he was born. Thought, his voice caught. Thought he'd need them. I'm sorry. Me too. He set the shoe on the shelf, carefully, like it might break. I should have thrown it out years ago. Why didn't you? Because it's all I have left of him, of them. He looked at the shelf, at the shoe, at the small remainders of 7 lives. Sometimes I think about burning it all, the cabin, the graves, everything. Start completely over. Why haven't you? Because that'd be admitting they were here, that they mattered. And if I erase every trace of them, then... He stopped. Then it's like they never existed. Penny stood and moved beside him. They existed. And they mattered. And keeping a shoe doesn't make you weak, Frost. It makes you human. He looked at her, his eyes bright. I don't know how to do this. Do what? This. Talk about them. Let someone in without waiting for them to die. Then we'll figure it out together. What if I can't? Then we'll figure that out too. He reached out, hesitated, then took her hand. His grip was warm, calloused, solid, real. I'm scared, he admitted. Me too. But you're still here. Yes. Why? Penny squeezed his hand. Because fear's not a good enough reason to walk away. They stood there, hands linked, surrounded by the ghosts of 7 women who'd loved this man and lost. But for the first time since she'd arrived, Penny didn't feel their weight, didn't feel like she was competing with their memory. She felt like she was writing a new story, one that didn't end in a grave. And maybe, just maybe, Frost was starting to believe that too. Jamar said. The next weeks were quieter. No more visitors, no more tracks in the snow. Just the 2 of them, the cabin, and the slow approach of deep winter. They fell into routines that felt almost domestic. Penny cooked while Frost mended tools. He chopped wood while she organized supplies. They took turns reading aloud from the few books in the cabin, a battered copy of Shakespeare's plays, a field guide to Western plants, a collection of frontier tall tales that made them both laugh. And slowly, carefully, they learned each other. Penny discovered that Frost hummed while he worked, tuneless but constant, that he was left-handed but had taught himself to shoot right, that he couldn't sleep without checking the door was barred at least twice. Frost learned that Penny talked to herself when she was thinking through a problem, that she was terrified of spiders but would kill them anyway rather than ask for help, that she cried during the sad parts of stories but would deny it if he mentioned it. They were small things, the kind of things you only learn by living alongside someone, by paying attention. One night, 3 weeks after the confrontation, they were sitting by the fire when Frost asked, "Do you regret it, coming here?" Penny looked up from the sock she was darning. "No." "Do you regret letting me?" "I didn't let you. You forced your way in." "True, but you could have made it harder." "Could have. Didn't want to." "Why not?" He poked at the fire, sending sparks up the chimney. "Because I was tired of being alone. And because—" He paused. "Because you looked at me like I was a person, not a story. And I hadn't felt that in a long time." Penny set down the sock. "You are a person. A good one. I've made a lot of mistakes. So have I. Doesn't make us bad, just makes us human." Frost smiled, a real smile, the kind she was seeing more often now. "You always this optimistic?" "Only when I'm right." "Which is always." "Obviously." He laughed, and the sound filled the cabin, warm and alive. And Penny thought about how much had changed in just a few weeks. How this place that had seemed so heavy with death now felt like something else. Like home. The thought should have scared her, should have sent her running back to Carter's Ridge and safety and the life she knew. But it didn't. Because for the first time in a long time, she wasn't running from anything. She was running toward something, toward a future she couldn't quite see yet, but could feel taking shape. And whatever happened next, whatever came for them in the dark or the cold or the hard months ahead, she knew one thing for certain. She wasn't facing it alone. Neither was he. And maybe that was enough, but the quiet didn't last. It was Penny who heard them first, 3 nights later. A sound that didn't belong. The crack of a branch, too loud and too close. She sat up in the darkness, her hand already reaching for the pistol under her pillow. Frost was awake instantly. "What is it?" "Someone's outside." He was on his feet, rifle in hand, moving to the window in seconds. Penny joined him, pistol heavy in her grip. The moon was half full, casting enough light to see the clearing, the graves, the tree line. And there, emerging from the shadows, were more than 3 men this time. 6, maybe 7. Hard to count in the darkness. "They came back," Penny whispered, "with friends." Frost's voice was tight. "Stay away from the windows." But Penny didn't move. She watched as the men spread out, forming a loose circle around the cabin. They carried torches now, flames bright against the snow, and she could see their faces. Tom Bridger was there, and 2 others from the first visit. The rest were strangers. One man stepped forward, older, heavy-set, with a beard that covered half his face. He raised his voice, loud enough to carry. "Declan Frost, we're here for the girl." Frost didn't answer, just checked the rifle, his movements quick and practiced. "We know she's in there," the man continued. And we know you're not going to give her up easy, but this doesn't have to be difficult. Send her out, and we'll leave peaceful." "Go to hell," Frost called back. "That's where you belong, Frost, not her. She's still got a chance to live, if you let her go." Penny moved to the door, but Frost grabbed her arm. "Don't. I can talk to them. They didn't come here to talk. Then what do? We wait, see what they're planning." But waiting turned out to be the wrong choice, because the men weren't planning to negotiate. They were planning to smoke them out. The first torch hit the roof, then another. The dry wood caught fast, flames licking up toward the sky, and suddenly the cabin was full of smoke. "Damn it!" Frost choked out. He threw open the door, rifle raised. "You want to fight? Come get one." The men didn't hesitate. They rushed forward, and everything exploded into chaos. Frost fired once, twice. One man went down screaming, clutching his leg. Another stumbled back. But there were too many of them, and they kept coming. Penny stepped out beside him, pistol raised. Her hands shook, but she forced them steady, aimed at the closest man, and pulled the trigger. The recoil nearly knocked her over. The shot went wide, missing by a foot, but the man dove for cover anyway. "Reload!" Frost shouted. "Fast!" She did, her fingers clumsy with fear and cold. Around them, the cabin was burning. Flames roared up the walls, eating through the roof. The heat was intense, suffocating. Tom Bridger came at them from the side, something metal in his hand, a crowbar maybe, or a piece of pipe. Frost swung the rifle like a club, catching him across the chest. Tom went down hard, gasping for air. Two more men circled around. Penny fired again, and this time the bullet found something, not flesh, but wood. One of the men yelped and fell back. "We need to move," Frost said, grabbing her arm. "The cabin's gone. Get to the lean-to." They ran. The horses were panicking, eyes rolling, hooves stamping. Frost threw open the gate and slapped the nearest one on the rump. "Go! Get out of here!" The horses bolted into the darkness. Smart. At least they had a chance. Penny turned back toward the cabin. The flames were everywhere now, bright and hungry, consuming everything. The roof collapsed inward with a crash that sent sparks flying into the night sky. And the graves. The 7 graves were just beyond the fire, untouched, but eerily lit by the blaze. "We can't stay here," Frost said. He was bleeding from somewhere, his temple maybe, but he didn't seem to notice. "They'll regroup. Come at us again." "Where do we go?" "Into the trees. We lose them in the dark." "They have torches. Then we move fast." But before they could run, the bearded man stepped into the light. He had a rifle of his own now, pointed directly at Frost. "Enough," he said. "I don't want to kill you, Frost, but I will if you make me." Frost raised his own rifle. "Then you better shoot straight." "This isn't about you. It's about her." The man's eyes shifted to Penny. "You're coming back to town, Miss Ashford, whether you like it or not. I'm not going anywhere with you. Your father's dying. Heart gave out 2 days ago. He's asking for you." The words hit like a physical blow. Penny's knees went weak. "You're lying." "I'm not. Doc Brennan rode up from the next county to look at him. Said he's got maybe a week, maybe less." The man lowered his rifle slightly. "He wants to see you before he goes. That's why we're here. Not to hurt you, to bring you home." Penny looked at Frost. His face was hard, unreadable. "It could be a trick," he said quietly. "Could be." The bearded man shrugged. "Or it could be the truth, only one way to find out." Penny's mind raced. Her father, dying, asking for her. It could be a lie, a cruel manipulation to get her away from Frost, away from the mountains. But what if it wasn't? What if he really was dying and she wasn't there? "I need proof," she said. The man reached into his coat and pulled out another letter, threw it to the ground between them. "From Doc Brennan. Read it yourself." Penny picked it up, hands shaking, unfolded it by the light of the burning cabin. The handwriting was unfamiliar, but the words were clear. Her father had collapsed. His heart was failing. He'd asked for his daughter repeatedly, sometimes lucid, sometimes not. He didn't have long. It was dated 3 days ago. "This could still be fake," Frost said. "It's not," Penny whispered. She could feel the truth of it in her bones. Her father had been sick for years, his hands shaking, his breath short, his exhaustion constant. She'd ignored it because he'd told her to, because he'd insisted he was fine, and now he was dying. "I have to go," she said. "Penny, I have to. If he dies and I'm not there, her voice broke. I can't do that to him. Frost's jaw clenched. Then I'm going with you. No? The bearded man stepped forward. You're not. She goes back alone, or she doesn't go at all. That's not happening. It's the deal. Take it or leave it. Frost looked at Penny. She could see the war in his eyes, the need to protect her, the fear of losing her, the knowledge that she had to make this choice herself. Go, he said finally, but you take my horse, and you don't let them out of your sight. Frost, and you come back. You hear me? You come back. Penny nodded, unable to speak. She wanted to say something. Thank you. I'm sorry. I'll be careful. But the words stuck in her throat. The bearded man gestured to his group. Tom, get her a horse. The rest of you put out what's left of that fire before it spreads. Tom, still clutching his ribs, glared at them, but obeyed. Penny turned back to Frost one last time. He was still bleeding, still holding the rifle like he might use it. Behind him, the cabin was a skeleton of flames, the home they'd built together reduced to ash. Don't die while I'm gone, she said. Same to you. I mean it. No heroics, no stupid risks. I'll do my best. She wanted to hug him, to hold on to him and not let go. But the men were watching, and the moment was slipping away, and her father was dying. So she just nodded, climbed onto the horse Tom brought her, and rode away from the burning cabin, away from the man she'd come to save, back toward a town that had never wanted her and a father who might already be gone. Behind her, Frost stood alone in the snow, surrounded by 7 graves and the ashes of everything he'd ever built. And Penny wondered if she'd just made the biggest mistake of her life. Look, the ride back to Carter's Ridge took all night and half the next day. The men didn't talk to her, and she didn't talk to them. They rode in grim silence, pushing the horses hard, stopping only when absolutely necessary. Penny's mind was a storm. Her father dying. The cabin burning. Frost alone on that mountain. She kept seeing his face in the firelight, kept hearing his voice. You come back. She would. She had to. But first, she had to say goodbye. They reached town just as the sun was setting. People came out of their houses to stare as the group rode past. Penny kept her eyes straight ahead, refusing to meet their gazes. Let them stare, let them judge. It didn't matter anymore. The clinic looked the same. Small, sturdy, unchanged. But when Penny dismounted and pushed through the door, everything felt different. Mrs. Halloran was there along with 2 other women from town. They looked up when Penny entered, their expressions a mix of relief and reproach. He's in the back, Mrs. Halloran said, asking for you. Penny didn't wait. She went straight to the back room, her heart hammering. Her father was in bed, propped up on pillows, his face gray and sunken. But his eyes opened when she came in, and something like peace settled over his features. Penny. She crossed to him, took his hand. It was cold and thin, the bones too prominent. I'm here, Papa. You came back. Of course I did. He smiled weakly. Thought maybe you'd stay. With him. I will. After... She couldn't finish. After I'm gone. He squeezed her hand. It's all right. I'm ready. Don't say that. Why not? It's true. He coughed, a wet rattling sound. I've had a good life, longer than I deserved, and I got to see you grow into someone your mother would be proud of. Penny's eyes burned. She'd be proud of you too. Maybe, or maybe she'd be furious I let you go into those mountains. He coughed again. But I think she'd understand. You're like her, too brave for your own good. I'm not brave. I'm terrified. That's what brave is, being terrified and doing it anyway. He paused, breathing hard. Is he a good man, Frost? Yes. Does he love you? Penny blinked. I don't know. Do you love him? She thought about that, about the weeks in the cabin, the conversations by the fire, the way Frost looked at her like she was something precious and impossible, the way her chest ached when she thought about him alone on that mountain. Yes, she whispered. Her father nodded. Then go back to him. Don't let me keep you here. Papa, you're dying. I'm not leaving. You are. As soon as I'm gone, you're getting on a horse and going back. He gripped her hand tighter. Promise me. I can't. Promise me, Penny. She looked at him. at the man who'd raised her, taught her, loved her even when she made it difficult, the man who was slipping away right in front of her. "I promise," she said. He relaxed back into the pillows. "Good, that's good." They sat together in silence. Outside, the sun finished setting. The room grew dark. Mrs. Halloran brought in a lamp, then left them alone. Her father's breathing grew shallower, slower. Penny held his hand and talked to him about nothing. About the cabin, about the mountains, about the chess set Frost had carved from scrap wood. She didn't know if he heard her, but she talked anyway. Around midnight, his breathing changed, became labored, uneven. "Papa?" Penny leaned closer. His eyes opened one last time, focused on her with clarity. "You were the best thing in my life, you and your mother. Don't ever forget that." "I won't." And Penny, his voice was barely a whisper now. "Don't let fear win. Not ever." "I won't." He smiled, closed his eyes, and didn't open them again. Penny sat there holding his hand, feeling the warmth slowly leave it. She didn't cry. Not yet. There would be time for that later. For now, she just held on and tried to remember how to breathe. They buried him 2 days later in the small cemetery outside town. Half of Carter's Ridge turned out for the funeral, not because they loved him, but because it was expected. Penny stood by the grave and listened to Pastor Whitmore talk about eternal rest and peace and all the things people said when someone died. She didn't hear most of it. Her mind was already back in the mountains. After the service, Mrs. Halloran approached her. "You'll stay now, won't you? Run the clinic like your father wanted." Penny looked at her. "No. No, but I'm going back. To him? To that cursed man? To the man I love, who isn't cursed, who never was." Mrs. Halloran's face twisted. "You're making a terrible mistake. So everyone keeps telling me." Penny turned away. "But it's mine to make." She went to the general store and bought supplies. More food, more ammunition, heavy blankets for the coming winter. Mr. Chen helped her pack it all onto a horse without comment. But as she was leaving, he said quietly, "Be careful up there." "I will." "And Miss Ashford," he paused. "I'm glad you're going back. That mountain's a lonely place. You shouldn't be alone." Penny smiled. "Thank you." She left at first light the next morning. No one tried to stop her this time. They just watched her go, their faces a mix of pity and judgment and relief. Let her leave. Let her throw her life away. It was one less problem for them to worry about. The ride up the mountain felt longer this time. Maybe because she was alone. Maybe because she kept expecting something to go wrong. The horse to stumble, a storm to hit, men to appear out of nowhere with rifles and torches. But nothing happened. The trail was clear. The weather held. And when she finally reached the clearing where the cabin had stood, her heart broke all over again. It was gone. Completely gone. Just a burned-out shell, the walls collapsed, the roof caved in. The lean-to was damaged but still standing, and beyond it all the 7 graves were untouched, the markers standing like sentinels. But Frost was nowhere to be seen. Penny dismounted, her stomach twisting. "Frost?" No answer. She moved through the ruins, looking for any sign of him. His rifle was gone. His coat. Everything portable had been taken. Had he left? Had he assumed she wasn't coming back and just gone? Then she heard it, a sound from the tree line, movement. She spun, hand on the pistol. "Frost?" He emerged from the shadows, rifle in hand, looking like he hadn't slept in days. When he saw her, he stopped dead. "Penny, you're alive." "So are you." They stood there, 20 feet apart, just staring at each other. Then Frost crossed the distance in 4 long strides and pulled her into his arms. Penny held on to him, her face pressed against his chest, breathing in the smell of wood smoke and pine. He was solid, real, alive. "I thought you weren't coming back," he said into her hair. "I promised I would." Promises get broken all the time. Not mine. She pulled back to look at him. His face was bruised, a cut above his eye half healed. "What happened? After you left?" "They tried to finish what they started. Came back the next night with more men. I fought them off, but..." He gestured at the ruins. "Lost the cabin." "Where have you been staying?" "Cave about a mile north. Not comfortable, but it's dry." Penny looked at the burned cabin, then back at him. We'll rebuild. We? You think I rode all the way back up here to leave again? Something shifted in his expression. Your father, he died 2 days ago. Her voice cracked, but she kept going. And before he died, he made me promise to come back to you. Frost's arms tightened around her. I'm sorry. Me too. She let herself lean into him. But he was right. This is where I belong. With you. Even after everything, the fire, the men, even after everything. He pulled back to look at her, his hands framing her face. I don't deserve you. Probably not, but you're stuck with me anyway. Penny, I love you, she said. The words felt strange on her tongue, terrifying and true. I love you, and I'm not going anywhere. So you can accept that or you can argue about it, but either way, I'm staying. Frost stared at her. Then he kissed her. It was clumsy, desperate, full of fear and relief, and something that felt like hope. Penny kissed him back, her hands fisting in his coat, holding on like he might disappear if she let go. When they finally pulled apart, both breathing hard, Frost rested his forehead against hers. I love you too, he said quietly. I didn't think I could, after everything, but I do. I know. You know? I'm very perceptive. He laughed, breathless. You're very stubborn. That too. They stood there in the ruins of the cabin, surrounded by ashes and graves and the wreckage of Frost's past. But for the first time, it didn't feel like an ending. It felt like a beginning. We'll build something new, Penny said. Something better. It won't be easy. Nothing worth doing ever is, Frost nodded slowly. Then he took her hand and led her toward the trees. Come on, I'll show you the cave. It's not much, but it's home for now. Home is wherever you are. He looked back at her, something soft in his eyes. Yeah, I guess it is. They walked into the forest together, leaving the burned cabin and the 7 graves behind. The winter was coming, and it would be hard, brutal even, but they'd face it together, and maybe, just maybe, they'd prove that love didn't have to end in tragedy, that curses could be broken, that 2 broken people could build something whole. The cave was exactly what Frost had said, dry, small, barely enough room for 2 people and their supplies. But it kept the wind out, and that was enough. They spent the first night there in silence, too exhausted to do more than eat cold rations and sleep. Penny woke once in the darkness to find Frost sitting at the cave entrance, rifle across his knees, watching the forest. Can't sleep? She asked. Don't want to, in case they come back. They won't. Not tonight. You don't know that. Neither do you. She sat up, pulling the blanket around her shoulders. Come here. You need rest. I need to keep watch. Then I'll keep watch with you. He looked at her, his face half-shadowed. You're supposed to be sleeping. So are you. They sat together at the cave mouth, shoulders touching, watching the darkness. The forest was alive with small sounds, wind in the branches, animals moving through the underbrush, the distant call of an owl. Normal sounds, safe sounds. After a while, Frost said, I keep thinking about the cabin, all those years I spent there, and now it's just gone. We'll build another one. With what? I don't have tools anymore. Don't have lumber. Don't have... He stopped. Don't have anything. You have me. He turned to look at her. That's not enough to build a house. No, but it's enough to start. Frost was quiet for a long moment. Then he leaned his head against hers. I'm tired, Penny. So damn tired of losing things. Then stop expecting to lose them. Stop waiting for everything to fall apart. That's easier said than done. I know. But you've been living like you're already dead for so long, you forgot what it's like to actually be alive. She took his hand. I'm not going anywhere, and I'm not dying. So you need to start believing that. What if I can't? Then fake it until you can. He almost smiled. That doesn't sound very scientific. Science is about testing hypotheses. So test this one. Assume I'm going to survive and see what happens. And if you don't, then you can say you were right. But until then, you owe it to both of us to at least try. Frost squeezed her hand. You're relentless. I've been told. They sat together until dawn, watching the sky lighten from black to gray to pale gold. And when the sun finally rose, Penny felt something shift. Not hope, exactly, but the possibility of it. Over the next week, they salvaged what they could from the burned cabin. Frost's tools had survived, buried under debris, but intact. Some of the food stores in the root cellar were still good. And miraculously, the child's shoe Penny had found was there too, tucked in a metal box that had protected it from the flames. Frost held it for a long time, not saying anything. Then he put it back in the box and buried it near the graves. Letting go? Penny asked. Remembering. There's a difference. They worked side by side, clearing the site, sorting through the wreckage. It was hard, dirty work, and Penny's hands blistered within the first day. But she didn't complain. This was part of rebuilding, not just the cabin, but the life they were choosing. On the 8th day, riders appeared at the tree line. Frost grabbed the rifle immediately, but Penny put a hand on his arm. Wait, look! There were only 2 of them this time, and one was Mr. Chen. He rode forward slowly, hands visible, no weapons drawn. The other rider stayed back, a young man Penny didn't recognize. We're not here to fight, Mr. Chen called out. Frost didn't lower the rifle. Then why are you here? To help. If you'll let us. Penny stepped forward. Mr. Chen? He dismounted, moving carefully. Miss Ashford, I heard what happened, the fire, the attack. I'm sorry. You're sorry, so you came all the way up here? I came because what they did was wrong, and because, he glanced at Frost, because I don't believe in curses. I believe in bad luck and worse people, and you two have had enough of both. The young man dismounted too. He was maybe 20 with work-roughened hands and a nervous expression. I'm David. I work at Mr. Chen's store. He said you might need help rebuilding. Frost finally lowered the rifle. Why would you help us? Because someone should. Mr. Chen said simply, and because most of the town's too afraid or too stupid to see past their own superstition, but not everyone is. Penny looked at Frost. He was tense, uncertain, still waiting for the trap. But there was no trap, just 2 men with tools and lumber strapped to their horses, offering help. We'd appreciate it, Penny said. Over the next month, they rebuilt. Mr. Chen and David came up every few days with supplies. Wood, nails, tar paper for the roof. Sometimes they brought food. Once they brought a cast iron stove someone in town had been willing to part with. Who paid for all this? Frost asked. I did, Mr. Chen said. Consider it an investment in proving idiots wrong. The new cabin took shape slowly. It was smaller than the old one, but sturdier. Frost insisted on building it back from the graves, giving them space. Penny thought it was good, a physical separation from the past. They worked from dawn to dusk, and Penny learned things she'd never thought she'd need to know. How to notch logs so they fit together. How to mix mortar. How to hang a door so it swung true. Her hands calloused over, her back ached constantly, but she felt strong in a way she never had before. One evening, while Frost and David were working on the roof, Mr. Chen pulled Penny aside. The town's talking, he said. Let them talk. They're saying you're already cursed, that you'll be dead by spring. Then they'll be disappointed when I'm not. Mr. Chen smiled. I told them the same thing, but you should know, some of them are angry. They think you're making them look like fools. I'm not making them look like anything. They're doing that themselves. True, but angry fools are dangerous fools. Watch yourself. Penny nodded. She'd been watching. Every time they worked outside, she kept the pistol close. Every night, Frost checked the perimeter. They weren't taking chances. By the time the first heavy snow fell, the cabin was finished. It wasn't perfect, the door stuck sometimes, and the windows were smaller than Penny would have liked, but it was solid, warm, theirs. The night they moved in, Frost built a fire in the new stove and they sat together on the floor, eating stew David had brought. It's not much, Frost said, looking around. It's everything. The old cabin was bigger. This one doesn't have ghosts. He looked at her. You sure about that? Positive. This is ours, just ours. Frost reached over and took her hand. I never thought I'd have this again. A home. Someone to share it with. Well, now you do, and you're stuck with it. I can live with that. They finished eating in comfortable silence. Outside, the wind howled, but inside it was warm and quiet. Safe. Penny leaned against Frost's shoulder. Thank you. For what? For letting me stay, for not pushing me away. You didn't exactly give me a choice. I gave you plenty of choices, you just kept making the right ones. He kissed the top of her head. Or the stupid ones. Same thing sometimes. Gokishag. Winter came down hard that year. The snow piled higher than Penny had ever seen, and the cold was brutal. But the cabin held. The stove kept them warm, and they settled into a rhythm that felt almost normal. Frost taught Penny to hunt. She was terrible at it at first, too impatient, too loud, but she got better. Her first successful kill was a rabbit, and she felt both proud and slightly sick about it. Gets easier, Frost said. Does it? No, but you get used to it. They ice fished in the frozen creek, read by firelight, played endless games of chess. Penny won most of them, and Frost accused her of being too smart for her own good. You're just a sore loser. I'm realistic about my abilities. You're terrible at chess, just admit it. I'm learning. You've been learning for 2 months. At some point, it's not learning anymore. It's just losing. He threw a small piece of wood at her. She threw it back. And they both ended up laughing so hard they couldn't breathe. Those were the good days, but there were hard days too. Days when Frost woke up from nightmares, gasping, reaching for the rifle. Days when Penny found him standing by the window, staring at the graves, his face haunted. You all right? She'd ask. Yeah, just remembering. You want to talk about it? Not really. And she'd let it go. Because some things couldn't be talked through. They just had to be lived with. But slowly, the nightmares came less often. The haunted look faded. And Frost started to believe, really believe, that Penny was going to survive. 3 months into winter, Mr. Chen made another trip up the mountain. This time, he brought news. Tom Bridger's dead. Penny and Frost both looked up sharply. What happened? Penny asked. Fell through ice on the river, drunk, apparently. Went out at night, didn't watch where he was stepping. Mr. Chen shrugged. They pulled him out 2 days later. Frost's expression was unreadable. And people are saying? Some say it's justice. Some say it proves the curse is real, that anyone who comes after you ends up dead. Mr. Chen snorted. Most are just relieved it wasn't someone they liked. Penny felt a complicated mix of emotions. She'd never liked Tom. He'd been cruel, stupid, dangerous, but she didn't wish him dead either. I'm sorry, she said. Don't be. He made his own choices. Mr. Chen pulled out a letter. This came for you, from Carter's Ridge. Figured I'd bring it up rather than wait for spring. Penny took it. The handwriting was unfamiliar. She opened it carefully. It was from Doc Brennan, the doctor who'd treated her father. He wrote to tell her that her father's affairs had been settled, the clinic sold, and the proceeds deposited in an account in her name. If she wanted to claim it, she could come to town. If not, he'd hold it for her. My father's money, she said quietly. Frost read over her shoulder. That's a fair amount. More than I expected. You going to claim it? Penny thought about that. About going back to Carter's Ridge, facing the people who'd driven her out, collecting money from a life she'd left behind. Eventually, but not yet. Why not? Because I don't need it yet. And because I'm not ready to go back there. She folded the letter. When spring comes, maybe, but not before. Mr. Chen nodded. Wise. Let the town settle down first. Let them get used to the idea that you're still alive. He left the next morning, promising to return when the weather broke. And Penny and Frost settled back into their winter routine, the money forgotten for now. Spring came late and wet. The snow melted into thick mud that made travel nearly impossible. But the world came alive again. Birds returning, animals emerging from hibernation, green things pushing up through the earth. Penny planted a garden in the space where the old cabin had stood. Carrots, beans, potatoes. Simple things that would grow despite the short season and rocky soil. Frost watched her work, leaning against the new cabin wall. You know anything about gardening? Not really, but I read a book once. That's your solution to everything. Read a book. It's worked so far. Fair enough. The garden was scraggly and uneven, but it grew, and every morning Penny checked on it, pulling weeds, watering when needed, talking to the plants like they could hear her. "You're insane," Frost said, watching her argue with a stubborn beanstalk. "I'm encouraging it. You're having a conversation with a vegetable, and it's a better conversation than half the ones I've had with people." He laughed, and Penny realized she was hearing that sound more and more often now. Laughter. Real, unguarded laughter. The curse was breaking, not because of magic or divine intervention, but because they'd chosen to stop believing in it. In early summer, they went down to Carter's Ridge together. Not to stay, just to visit, to claim Penny's inheritance and show the town that she was still alive. The ride down felt strange, like visiting a place from a dream. The town looked the same buildings, same streets, same people, but everything felt different. They tied up outside the general store. People stared, whispered, pointed, but no one approached. No one confronted them. Mr. Chen came out, grinning. "Wondered when you'd show up." "Had to wait for the mud to dry," Penny said. They collected the money from Doc Brennan, who treated Penny with careful politeness, and Frost with wary respect. They bought supplies, more than they could carry, necessities for the coming year. Seeds, tools, fabric, coffee. And then they visited her father's grave. It was well tended, the grass trimmed, fresh flowers placed at the headstone. Someone had been taking care of it. "Mrs. Halloran," Penny said, reading the note tucked among the flowers. "She hated me, but she loved my father. People are complicated." "Yeah." They stood there for a while, Penny's hand in Frost's, the sun warm on their faces. "I miss him," Penny said. "I know. But I think he'd be proud. Of this. Of us. I think so too." They rode back up the mountain that afternoon, their horses loaded with supplies, their hearts lighter than they'd been in months. And when they reached the cabin, Penny looked at the 7 graves and felt something she hadn't expected. Peace. Not because the women were forgotten, but because they were remembered for what they were. People who'd lived and died in a hard place, loved by a good man who'd carried their memory too long. "I want to plant flowers there," Penny said, "on the graves, something that'll come back every year." Frost looked at her. "You sure?" "I'm sure. They deserve to be remembered, but not as a curse, as people." "What kind of flowers?" "Wildflowers. The kind that grow here naturally, strong things." They planted them together the next day. Columbine, lupine, Indian paintbrush, bright hardy flowers that could survive the mountain weather. And when they were finished, Frost stood back and looked at the graves for a long time. "You all right?" Penny asked. "Yeah, I think I am." "Good." He turned to her. "Thank you." "For what?" "For not giving up on me. For being stubborn enough to stay." "You're welcome. But I didn't do it for you. I did it for us." "Us." He said the word like he was testing it. I liked the sound of that. "Me too." They walked back to the cabin together, leaving the graves behind. And for the first time in 10 years, Frost didn't look back. That summer, they thrived. The garden produced more than Penny had hoped. They hunted, fished, preserved food for the coming winter. Mr. Chen came up once a month, bringing news from town and taking back letters Penny wrote to Doc Brennan and a few others who'd been kind. The town slowly accepted that Penny wasn't going to die. That the curse, if it had ever existed, was broken. Some people still whispered, some still believed, but most just moved on, found other things to worry about. And on the mountain, Penny and Frost built a life. It wasn't perfect. They argued sometimes about money, about how to fix the leaking roof, about whether they needed another horse. Frost still had nightmares occasionally. Penny still pushed too hard, worked too much, forgot to rest. But they were happy. Genuinely, quietly happy in a way neither of them had thought possible. One evening in late August, they sat on the cabin steps watching the sunset. The sky was on fire, orange and pink and gold, and the air smelled of pine and earth and coming autumn. "You ever regret it?" Frost asked. "Leaving town? Giving up everything you knew?" Penny thought about that, about the clinic, her father, the life she could have had. Safe, predictable, acceptable. "No," she said. Not even once. Not even when I'm being difficult? Especially not then, he smiled. Why? Because difficult means you're still trying, still fighting, and as long as you're fighting, we're winning. Winning what? Everything. The right to be happy, the right to build something new, the right to prove that love doesn't have to destroy people, it can save them instead. Frost pulled her closer. You're too smart for your own good. I've been told. They sat in comfortable silence as the sun sank below the mountains, and Penny thought about curses, how they were just stories people told to make sense of senseless tragedy, how they gave power to fear instead of hope, how they could destroy you if you let them. But they didn't have to, because the truth was there had never been a curse, just a man who'd lost too much and a town too afraid to see past their own superstition. Just bad luck and hard living and the brutal reality of frontier life. And it took someone stubborn enough, reckless enough, to look at all that death and say, I don't believe it. Penny had been that person. And in refusing to believe she'd broken something that had never really existed in the first place, 7 women had died. That was true. That would always be true. But the 8th one lived. And in her living, she proved that love didn't have to be a death sentence, that grief didn't have to be a life sentence, that 2 broken people could find each other in the wreckage and build something worth keeping. The curse was dead, not because of magic, but because they'd chosen to stop feeding it. And that, Penny thought, was the only miracle worth believing in. March. Winter came again, as it always did. But this time, they were ready. The cabin was stocked, the wood was cut, the garden had been harvested and preserved. They settled in, prepared for months of snow and cold and isolation. But it didn't feel like isolation anymore. It felt like home. On the first really cold night, when the temperature dropped so low that frost formed on the inside of the windows, Penny and Frost sat by the stove playing cards. I've been thinking, Frost said. Dangerous. I'm serious. Penny set down her cards. About what? About the future. About what happens next. What do you want to happen next? He was quiet for a moment, then, I want to marry you, if you'll have me. Penny's breath caught. Are you asking? I'm asking. No ring? No romantic speech? Just asking? I don't have a ring. Don't have much of anything, really. Just this cabin and a past that's probably too heavy for any sane person to take on. He looked at her. But I love you. And I want to spend whatever time I have left making you happy. If you'll let me. Penny felt tears prick her eyes. That was actually pretty romantic. So is that a yes? That's a yes. He kissed her, and it was warm and sweet and full of promise. When they pulled apart, Penny was smiling. When? She asked. Whenever you want. Spring. When Mr. Chen comes up, he can witness it. We'll do it right here in front of the cabin. Not in town? Definitely not in town. This is our place, our life. We'll do it our way. Frost nodded. Our way. I like that. They spent the rest of the winter planning. Not a big wedding, just them. Mr. Chen, if he could make it, maybe David. Simple vows, simple ceremony. But it would be theirs. And when spring finally broke and the world thawed again, they stood in front of the cabin with Mr. Chen and David as witnesses and promised to love each other for as long as they lived. No pastor, no town watching, no curse hanging over them, just 2 people choosing each other again and again, until the choosing became as natural as breathing. Passing. Years passed. The cabin weathered storms and stood strong. The garden grew bigger, more productive. They added a second room, then a small barn for the horses, and a milk cow Mr. Chen helped them acquire. The graves became part of the landscape, marked by wildflowers that bloomed faithfully every summer. Beautiful, peaceful, no longer heavy with fear. Penny never did go back to practicing medicine in town, but people started coming to her anyway. Trappers with broken bones, families with sick children, anyone desperate enough to make the climb. She treated them all, charged what they could afford, sent them on their way with instructions, and sometimes with food they needed more than payment. Word spread. The cursed man's wife wasn't cursed at all. She was a healer, and she was good. Frost built furniture, tables, chairs, bed frames, and Mr. Chen sold them in town. The work was steady, the money decent. They were never rich, but they were comfortable, and they were happy. 5 years after they married, Penny realized she was pregnant. She told Frost one morning over breakfast, her heart pounding, because this was the thing that had killed Mary, the thing that had taken 2 lives instead of 1. Frost went very still. "You're sure?" "I'm sure." "And you're scared, terrified." He came around the table and knelt in front of her, taking her hands. "We'll be careful. We'll do everything right. And we'll get Doc Brennan up here when the time comes. We won't take chances." "What if it's not enough?" "Then we'll deal with it. Together. Like we deal with everything." Penny looked at him. This man who'd been so afraid of losing people that he'd stopped living. Who'd learned to hope again, to trust again, to believe that good things could last. "I love you," she said. "I love you too. Both of you." The pregnancy was hard. Penny was sick for months, tired all the time, her body rebelling against the changes. But Frost was there for every moment of it, holding her hair when she was sick, rubbing her aching back, reading to her when she couldn't sleep. And in the spring, when the wildflowers bloomed on the 7 graves, Penny gave birth to a daughter. The labor was long and brutal. Doc Brennan had come up 2 weeks early and stayed in the cabin, ready for anything. And when the baby finally came, screaming, healthy, perfect, Penny wept with relief. Frost held his daughter for the first time with shaking hands, his eyes wet. "She's beautiful." "She's ours," Penny said. They named her Emma, after Frost's first wife. Because she deserved to be remembered. Because love didn't erase the past. It honored it and built on it. And when Mr. Chen came to visit a month later and saw Penny nursing the baby while Frost cooked dinner, he smiled. "You did it," he said. "You broke the curse." "There was never a curse," Penny said. "Just fear. And we stopped being afraid." Same thing, isn't it? Maybe. But Penny knew it wasn't that simple. Breaking the curse hadn't been one moment, one choice. It had been 1,000 small decisions, to stay, to trust, to hope, to keep choosing each other even when it was hard. It had been Frost learning to believe he deserved happiness. Penny refusing to accept that loving him was a death sentence. Both of them building something new from the wreckage of everything that had come before. The curse had been real in the sense that belief made it real, and it had been broken the same way, by refusing to believe anymore, all told. More years passed. Emma grew into a wild, fearless child who climbed trees and caught frogs and asked 1,000 questions a day. She had Penny's stubbornness and Frost's quiet strength, and she loved the mountain like it was part of her. Sometimes, on quiet evenings, Penny would take her daughter to the graves and tell her about the women buried there. About Emma, who'd loved hard and died young. About Rebecca, who'd been brave but scared. About all 7 women who'd lived and loved and deserved to be remembered. "Why are they here?" young Emma asked once. "Because this was their home, and because they mattered." Did Daddy love them? He did, very much. Does he still? In a different way, yes. But he loves us most of all. Emma nodded, satisfied with that answer. And Penny thought about how strange it was, raising a child in the shadow of 7 graves, teaching her that love could coexist with loss, that memory didn't diminish new joy. But it worked, because Emma grew up unafraid, knowing her father's history but not haunted by it, understanding that the past was real but didn't have to define the future. On Emma's 10th birthday, Frost carved new markers for the graves. Better ones, with the women's names and years of life clearly marked, a permanent memorial. "Why now?" Penny asked. "Because I'm not afraid anymore, and because they deserve to be remembered properly." They planted the markers together as a family. And that night, sitting around the table in the cabin they'd built, Penny looked at her husband and daughter and felt something she'd spent years chasing: contentment, not the absence of struggle. They still fought the mountain, the weather, the isolation. Money was still tight sometimes. Emma got sick occasionally, and Penny's heart stopped until she got better. Frost still had moments where the past caught up with him, where he looked at his family and couldn't quite believe they were real. But they were real. And they were here. And that was enough. On the 20th anniversary of the day, Penny pulled Frost from the river. They stood together in the clearing and looked at everything they'd built. The cabin, solid and weathered. The barn, larger now, housing 3 horses and a handful of chickens Emma had insisted they needed. The garden, sprawling and productive, and the graves, covered in wildflowers, peaceful in the late summer sun. "You ever think about that day?" Frost asked. "When you dragged me out of the water?" "Sometimes." "Do you regret it?" Penny looked at him, at the gray in his hair, the lines around his eyes, the scars on his hands from 20 years of hard work, at the man who'd been so certain he was cursed that he'd tried to die rather than risk hurting anyone else. "Not even once," she said. "Not even when I'm being difficult? Especially not then." He smiled. "I love you. I love you too." Emma came running from the barn, chasing one of the chickens that had escaped. She was laughing, wild and free, completely unaware that the place she called home had once been a graveyard for hope. And that, Penny thought, was the point. The curse had been real only because people believed in it, because they looked at tragedy and saw supernatural doom instead of the brutal reality of frontier life, because they needed someone to blame for the randomness of death. But curses weren't broken by magic. They were broken by choice, by refusing to accept the story others wrote for you, by building something new from the ashes of what had been lost. 7 women had died here. That was true. That would always be true. But it wasn't the whole truth, because the 8th woman lived. And in living, she proved that love wasn't a curse, it was a choice. A deliberate, daily choice to hope when fear seemed smarter, to stay when leaving seemed safer, to believe that broken things could be made whole again. It hadn't been easy. Nothing worth doing ever was. But it had been worth it. Every hard day, every cold winter, every moment of doubt, all of it had been worth it for this. For standing in the clearing with the man she loved and the daughter they'd raised, surrounded by the ghosts of the past and the promise of the future. The curse was dead. Had been dead for 20 years. And in its place was something better. A life. A family. A home built on the ruins of grief and fear and loss, but standing strong despite it all. That was the real miracle. Not that Penny had survived, but that they'd both learned to live. And in a place where survival was everything, where the land killed the weak and buried the unlucky, living, really living, with joy and purpose and love, was the greatest victory of all. Frost took her hand. "Come on, Emma's probably let all the chickens out by now." Penny laughed. "Probably." They walked back to the cabin together, leaving the graves behind. And the wildflowers bloomed on, year after year, a reminder of what had been lost and what had been found. 7 graves. 1 life. And the understanding that sometimes the bravest thing you could do was refuse to believe the story everyone else told about you. That love didn't have to destroy. That curses were just fear wearing a different name. And that 2 broken people could build something whole if they were brave enough to try.